What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast.
Where we talk about fights, news, and more.
And today we're, of course, breaking down UFC 324 that took place in Las Vegas this past weekend. And it saw Gaethje defeat Paddy Pimblett in quite dominant fashion to win the interim lightweight belt. But we're gonna start off from the bottom here with the headliner of the prelims, which was Umar facing off against Figgy, as we call him, Figueiredo. And it was
Yes.
quite a dominant win, has to be said. And the reason why I sound like that is that I wasn't personally too satisfied. As you know, you got this one spot on, by the way. I predicted a finish, a submission for Umar because I thought he just had to. But yeah, like you predicted, it was a not. I don't want to say boring because, of course, it's dominance, but it was a fairly uneventful fight. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I was right on this one. I didn't want to be because I feel like, you know, it's time for Umar to actually take the next step, just like Merab did when he, submitted Sean O'Malley. It's time for Umar to take the next step and actually finish one opponent, um, just in some way. And I thought that, even though, of course, we put respect on Figue's name, he did have some great moments in the past in the UFC, but those times are gone now, and, he's old now, and he's not the same fighter he once was, and this should have been, and, you know, of course, as you said, it was a domination from Umar, and in terms of, a dominating victory, I guess he can't really get better, but he should have gotten some sort of finisher. I mean, he was so dominant not only on the ground, basically, he was dominant also on the feet. And I think even if he doesn't have, because I don't think Umar really has any power, I still think he could have almost went for a knockout if he didn't feel like he could submit him on the ground. So I was, yeah, sure, I was right, and I was disappointed at the same time. And yeah,
Yeah, that's key
I
what
don't
you
think
said there.
I'd ever bet. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, but just an interesting point. Like you
No, it's
said,
all good.
it is like the most dominant way to win a fight. But just like you mentioned with the striking, I do like to see a wrestler like Merab, incorporate the striking, even though he maybe
Yeah.
doesn't have the striking advantage, like in the Sandhagen fight with Merab, where didn't have a range advantage at all. He was much shorter, and Sandhagen is, I think most people would agree that he's a lot better at striking than Merab. But that didn't stop Merab from actually winning a lot of exchanges in that fight, and it impressed at least me. Um, so if Umar had done something similar here, I think he could have gotten some more respect. But to just do the same old trusted method, I mean, of course, there's something good in that, but the greats don't do that. The greats don't just. It's called mixed martial arts for a reason. You're supposed to mix it up, right? Even though if you have
Yeah.
one weapon that is your strongest, but even his mentor Khabib uses wrestling to get to submissions. He didn't just lay on top of guys. And to add to that, that was against the best guys. It was against McGregor. It was against Poirier. It was against Gaethje. And Khabib even
Yeah.
then went for the submissions and got him as well. So a bit disappointed for me. But like I said, credit to you for getting it right. But in regards of what's next to Umar, I think we'll get to that later on, right? With him and the whole picture in the bantamweight division. And as for Figgy, quickly, I mean, if he wants to have some fun fights, maybe do it. But he looks old, and I mean, he's old. He's 38. Maybe it's time to hang him up.
Yeah. I think so. I think that, of course, if Figgy wants to hang around in the UFC and pick up another fight, just for, I don't know, just for the fun of it, for the paycheck, to give the fans some, I don't know, more entertainment, then sure. But don't give him this type of matchup. Don't give him this type of, top level opposition. Give him something that at least, you know, his fans can cheer him on a bit, and he won't have to go out, with his head low, sort of in the UFC. Of course, if he himself insists that he should get this type of matchup, I don't know, maybe it's more money in this, or just he just wants to have this opposition. Then I think that the UFC has to, step in eventually and say that, um, that to do different matchmaking basically, because the bantamweight division, it is actually quite stacked and there's a lot of different opponents, and I didn't really want to see this fight either way. So I think it's time for Figgy to step out of this level of the competition and pick up some maybe smaller matchups in the future.
Yeah.
And regarding Umar, I think that we will speak more on his future, because the bantamweight division, as we said, is a bit stacked right now and a bit complicated with how things are going. So I think that regarding Umar, we are going to cover his potential matchup when we get to Sean O'Malley as well. So should we just move on to the next fight maybe
Yeah, absolutely.
right now? Yeah, so moving on, we have a featherweight bout between Arnold Allen and Gene Silva, where Gene Silva picked up a unanimous decision win here. And this was, sort of like the main event, quite a scrap, although it was more dominant from Gene Silva. You could say Allen had success in the first round, and he showed, his toughness. Silva is a good striker with a lot of power, and Allen, he did hang in there during the fight. He didn't get submitted as well. Silva did get him down on the ground a couple of, or more than a couple of times, but at least Allen managed to survive, and he got a round off him. Do you think that this was a good fight for Silva and for Allen respectively, or were you sort of disappointed with anyone's performance here, like the
N-
last fight?
no, not really, actually. This, for
Yeah,
me, might be a bold call, but it was actually the most technical fight for me
yeah,
on the entire card because I was really impressed by the level showed. As I said, Allen opened very strong, looked incredibly good in the first round, for me at least, thought. But Gene Silva, he
yeah.
continues to
He won
surprise
the
me.
first round, I think.
Yeah, exactly, pretty clearly. But Silva, of course, he came back, and he's a don't want to say he's underrated because there has been a lot of hype from Silva, but at least I've underrated him. And what we talked about before this fight was that Silva didn't show too much fight IQ against Diego Lopez, and he paid the price last time out. But for me, it was a real improvement from him in regards of that. He looked a bit
Yeah,
more intelligent in there, and his movement, his decision making. He's always a wild guy, and he was like clip farming and jumping off the back in the last seconds against Allen. He's always gonna try and do that stuff. But if you do it like briefly, it might be okay. That's obviously to capture some of the more casual fans. But in regards of his fighting, I think that this is a very solid win. I know Brendan Allen, Arnold Allen, of course it is. He people don't regard him as maybe the highest level of fighter, but I do think that he's a very intelligent and especially decent striker. So to come on, come on after the first round and change the fight and actually make it a pretty dominant win when you lose the first round of a 3-round fight clearly is very impressive. So all the praise to Gene Silva, but for me this was a very fresh start to the main card and a very high level fight, a bit higher level than even would have anticipated before it started. Um, were you surprised by anything in this fight, or
I mean, no, not really. I guess surprised, maybe a bit. Sort of that. I thought that maybe Allen. I mean, we predicted actually. I think both of us said that Allen had a really good chance in our prediction to this fight, and so I guess it would be maybe Allen. Um, that Allen could have maybe gotten if he would have gotten that he didn't have more success in the later rounds, but at the same time he had a lot of success in the first round, and I wasn't so that I was almost surprised with
no?
because I thought it would be maybe more even throughout the fight. And Gene Silva had some improvement in his like he covered in his IQ, and a really high level technical fight as well from him. So I actually wasn't in terms of what happened. I wasn't that surprised. Maybe my prediction wasn't exactly in line with what happened. But I think that I mean the main thing that surprised me, I guess, was Gene Silva jumping off Arnold Allen's back
Yeah,
in the one of the later rounds. I guess that was sort of unexpected,
yeah,
but
yeah. To say
he
the
sort of
least, yeah,
does. Yeah, exactly. So, but it sort of does those things, like you said, for the casual fans. Um, to get some I
engagement, right?
guess to get some, yeah, so some traction, some attention sort of. that thing gets a lot of attention on Twitter, for example. So there
Yeah,
is
that's
some
true.
game plan there, but otherwise, no. I mean, a good fight. I guess I was surprised most of all by it being such a technical fight. If I could give it that, maybe I thought it would be even more, even though it was, you know, quite a bit scrappy as well. I thought that it would maybe be even more scrappy and less technical with Yin Silva in there, but he kept it quite technical, at least, right? So,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's going to be interesting to see because he's a bit of a company man. He's like one of the most perfect fighters for the UFC. I mean, he trash talks, he's
yeah,
entertaining in the fights, he does some random stuff, and even in his post-fight interview, he was like, "Welcome to Paramount." It's like he tries to be one of the front figures of the UFC, even though a lot of people would probably not have him as that in regards to his fighting. He's a very like what can you say? He's a colorful character. I think it's safe to say,
yeah,
and he has actually moved up to a sixth place in the featherweight rankings right now. I heard some people talk about a title shot potentially. I think that's a bit far fetched, but I mean, surely he has to get a top ranked name, right? Is it time for him to fight someone like Laura Murphy or Evloev, or do you have anyone in mind who you would put him against next?
yeah. I mean, in terms of the featherweight rankings, I think that with Leo Murphy not sort of getting his title shot, I think that could be actually a good fight for him.
Yeah,
Um, I actually think so. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Regarding where they are right now, none of them having, of course, since Silva just fought, and Leo Murphy hasn't fought since, since August. So maybe he wants to fight a bit earlier than Jin Silva can fight. But I think that the other guys in the division, I think, are a bit too, obviously both Volk and Lopez are mashed up right now, and I think that Evloev it's a bit early for Lopez for
for
Silva to
Silva, huh?
fight
Yeah,
Lopez. Yes,
yeah, that's true.
or Evloev. I mean, so I think that actually, I think that Aaron Murphy is a good fight because that's potentially if Volk were to hang around after his fight against Lopez that's coming up this weekend. Um, I think that might be the next fight. The winner between Leo Murphy and Gene Silva, then perhaps,
Yeah, yeah, that's a
or
good idea.
Evloev. He probably is in the running as well, but we haven't heard anything about Evloev, and I'm really surprised by them not doing Evloev versus Murphy actually
Yeah, I mean, not
in
doing
beatdown.
Evloev against anyone. He was booked for the
Yeah,
summer, and then they just pulled him from the card, and people were like, "Oh, is this because he's getting a title shot or something?" And I was like, "Nope, nothing." Now we're 7 months down the line, and I haven't heard his name mentioned once. So I don't know where we have him in the whole discussion at featherweight. Obviously, Aljamain Sterling and Leon Murphy have been beefing quite a bit, and they seem to want to fight against each other. But for me, and I guess you will agree, Gene Silva and Leon Murphy is, like you said, one of the best fights to make in featherweight right now. Both
yeah,
the fact that
that's
they're
a good
very
fight.
skilled, very active, but also they're two exciting strikers with a lot of good knockouts. So I think that should be the most logical fight to make right now for both of them. Um,
Yeah,
um, but that's about it for that one, I reckon. Should we move on up against the fight that I'm not as happy to speak about for reasons that will become clear? Do you want to take this one? Waldo Cortes-Acosta winning in the second round with a TKO against Derek Lewis. What did you think about it?
yeah. So I mean, this one was. I don't really know what to even say about Rick Lewis here. I mean, you know, it's sort of like he just didn't want it. He never even showed up in the octagon this time. Of course we predicted this, we predicted it beforehand that, you know, Waldo Cortes Acosta would be the faster heavyweight here, and of course that was obvious. But it was almost like Derek Lewis. He didn't even like his soul didn't even show up. It's
No.
just like his body showed up in the octagon, and he just wandered around in there and got hit over and over again and didn't have anything to give. And yeah. So it's not really even that much to say about this fight except that you can say that Cortes Acosta put up a good fight. He knocked him out. That's all you can see, and it's Derek Lewis. So He didn't even let Derek Lewis almost never. He almost didn't even lay a hand on uh, Costa, right?
No, I mean the punches he was missing. He looked so incredibly
Yeah,
slow, and I mean it was of course good for Acosta to fight Lewis because Lewis is one of the most known heavyweights for the last 20 years. And that's also a point, by the way, that he's 40 now. He's not what he used to be in his prime. He's far from that version of Derek Lewis, but he was able to like move away. And for a second, I thought, oh, he's got some good head movements and footwork and stuff, Cortes-Acosta. And I was like, oh wait, this is Derek Lewis looking incredibly slow. And I mean the footwork. I know they are heavyweights, and I know he's 40 years old, but I also saw in the countdown how Derek Lewis was like, oh, I feel really good. I haven't felt this good for fight in a long time. Blah blah blah. And then he showed up like that, with barely moving his feet. I mean, it's embarrassing, really. You should never step in an octagon if you're in that kind of physical condition against a top-ranked guy in good form. It's a bit embarrassing, in my opinion, at least. And as well, I don't think it's a good look for the UFC to have this as a featured fight on the main card. I mean, the levels here to have this higher up on the card than a fight like Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva is abomination to the sport, really. But I don't want to get too dramatic. But yeah, I don't reckon we'll see much more from Derek Lewis. He's a fan favorite, but the power he has doesn't really matter when he can't use it and when he looks like a 60-year-old. But the more important point here is, of course, Cortes-Acosta having some amazing form. And you broke down the performance. I don't think we can say that much more about Cortes-Acosta's performance because he did what he needed to do, but it's hard to look impressive against someone who looks as bad as Lewis did. The real question, I reckon, is who do you give Cortes-Acosta next? Do you have an idea, or do you think we need to see a few more heavyweight fights to get a clear picture?
I mean, right now in the heavyweight division, it's sort of like obviously there's a we've talked about this before. There's a lack of real talent in there.
Yeah.
Um, and even more so, not right now. There's almost like a hold up in the division with the whole Gane and Aspinall situation. That we don't even need to get into right now because then we're gonna have a big rant, I think, coming from both of us
Yep.
regarding the UFC handling of that. But I mean, looking at the division, I think that there are some matchups that you can make, coming up. I think that maybe Curtis Blades
Yeah, I
is a
like that.
potential fight that you can make. Um, they haven't met before, and Blades has sort of had a bit of a up and down. He lost versus Pavlovich a couple of years ago. Then he won versus Almeida, and then he lost versus Aspinall. He got knocked out, and then he won on a pretty close, split decision versus Kunyev last summer. So I think that he's up for a fight relatively soon. It might be so that they make a fight for him earlier than that, probably. And
That's true.
he's an American, so maybe they want to have him on the on the
Oh,
White
White
House
just card.
card.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
quickly on
that's
that
the
though, I mean,
one.
Cortes-Acosta didn't take any damage here. And he has
Yeah,
like
that's true.
fought. He's been very active, if I remember correctly. I mean, um, obviously his last fight against Gassiev was in November, and then the fight before against Liha was also in November. So I mean, he has been very, very active. Fought. Wait, what? Am I seeing this right? Did he fight 5 times in 2025?
That's crazy.
And now in
The
January in
the only
2026?
problem though, yeah,
Yeah, what did you say? The only problem
yeah.
is.
No, just the only problem regarding his matchup is that you could sort of say that should he really get. I mean, there's no one else to really give him in the top, in further up because he lost versus Pavlovich. Pavlovich, I don't think that you can both, that you can, um,
Give him a new
sort
one
of motivate
higher. Or...
giving him, yeah, giving him like Volkov, and obviously, both Jan and Aspinall are booked, probably
Maybe I
for each
was
other.
looking
So
at that Volkov matchup because Volkov had a close decision most recently out against Almeida, so maybe that one. But as you said, maybe that's too far fetched. Not sure. But otherwise, I don't really see who you
I mean,
might.
I think it's Blades probably.
Yeah, it probably
If
has
I
to
could make,
be.
if we're talking about what we will do, I will probably just do Curtis Blades actually.
Yeah, Yeah, that's probably the best fight to make. I do have to agree with you. Yeah.
But
Or-
then, the whole problem of heavyweight is just almost another video for us to make,
Yeah.
sorting this mess out, sort of what to even do, with Volkov and Pavlovich just hang around. I mean, it's crazy. They are both, I mean, of course, we respect them a lot, but just looking at, as you know, the rankings, them being basically the top three of heavyweight just shows sort of how dead that division is. I mean, of course, they are really, really great, and we shouldn't underrate them. But regarding when you compare to some of the other divisions, just pound for pound, the
Yeah.
heavyweight division is such a weak division
It
when you
definitely
look at the
is.
top, 15 of
It's
the
one of the
division.
only
So
divisions that where you can think like if you threw in like a light heavyweight, who's one of the better ones, like a Blachowicz or Prochazka or Ulberg or something like that, I reckon they would clean heavyweight out, and that says a lot.
yeah,
But for me, it's a bit of a like thing with where like the champ obviously, and then the like top five. I hope that Cortes-Acosta will be part of this elite in the heavyweight because I actually do reckon that they are all right. Uh, The pool of MMA fighters there are heavyweights isn't too big, at least not for elite guys. There's a lot of fat guys, but the ones who are actually in shape, and I mean, the UFC only basically has five. So I hope at least that Cortes Acosta can be a part of that group, so we can see a bit more of new matchups. Because, like you said, the guys who are there, Gane, Volkov, Pavlovich, Blades, they've already almost met each other every single one. So it's good for some new, fresh matchup because everything below that is just tragic. I mean, Spivak, Tybora, Lewis, Gassiev, Tuivasa, these guys are, I don't think we need to mention them at all.
yeah,
So,
no,
like you said, hopefully Cortes Costa can get a good top tier matchup, and someone in that fight actually shows um, that we is something that we can regard as a bit of a higher standard in the heavyweight division. Because I think that the consensus is that it's quite weak, as you said, in comparison to other divisions. Um,
yeah.
all right, is it time to move on to our co-main event then, where we have a bit of a more stacked division where Sean O'Malley took on Song Yadong and closed out a somewhat controversial decision. I mean, a lot of people thought it was a draw. Some people had it to Song, some people to O'Malley. First of all, did you agree with this decision, or
I mean, yeah, I think I do actually agree. I mean, I know that for a lot of people it has been sort of controversial, and I think that some of that might have to do, with O'Malley's past, some of his past wins, being a bit controversial.
yeah,
Um, so I think that can maybe plays into it that some people will look at this and they're instantly, suspicious because it's O'Malley and it looks like on the stats maybe this fight should have gone to Song Yadong because of the takedowns. But if you watch the fight, I think that O'Malley, if you have to also if you judge it round by round, I think that even that probably looks even more clearly like if you give, let's say, the first round and the third round to O'Malley, I think that it's pretty clearly that he wins the fight regardless of the second round.
yeah,
I don't, because the second round I think is quite obviously a Song Yadong round, but the other two rounds I think are pretty clearly O'Malley rounds, and I think that third round is pretty dominant from O'Malley. And the main difference here, I think, when looking at the entire fight, is that I just think that it looks like O'Malley has more impact in what he does. He doesn't do as much. He doesn't have as much volume, which is a bit. I'm a bit. Of course, I have to say that I'm disappointed. I predicted before and that I thought that it will knock him out, and I'm also a bit disappointed in it not only being 3 rounds when they said that it was going to be a 5 rounder
yeah,
because it's the co-main event. So
that's
that's
true.
disappointing. Um, but otherwise, I have to say that sure, O'Malley didn't do as much as I would have liked him to do, and I'm pretty sure his coach also would agree with our sentiment there.
Yeah,
But what he did do, I think, was more impactful, and he did more damage. And that's what I'm judging this on. I think that it's a bit of a, of course, it's a disappointment, and it's bad for O'Malley because if he actually wants to have good fights coming up, and he wants the UFC to look at him like this guy can actually get another title shot and put up a good fight and win, it's a bad case for him to put up a performance like this. But I think that it's an O'Malley win, and it's a pretty mediocre performance for his previous standards or former standards. Do you agree with that?
I mean, yeah. I was listening to everything you said, obviously, and trying to
Yeah.
think what my next point was going to be, and you basically covered everything because I do agree with what you said down to a T. So I don't want to repeat any of it, but yeah, uh, like you said, spot on. Not a typically bad performance from Sean O'Malley, but as both of us thought, we did think that he was a lot better than this. And of
Yeah.
course, you can't blame a guy for winning, a bit like with the Umar situation. But it's the fact that I think he looks a bit complacent. And it's funny that you mentioned with this coach there, because Tim Welsh's coach, he wanted more. And he has a very good relationship with Sean O'Malley, but you could see in the corner that he wasn't happy, he wasn't satisfied. He was like, "What are you doing?" And Sean wasn't really responding. And after the fight, he was a bit arrogant and stuff. And as we've said previously, if Sean O'Malley could unlock 80% of his potential, he would be champion right now. If he could unlock 100, he would be the greatest of all time. But for me
Yeah.
right now, there's so much more I would like to see. So to see him close out a kind of close points decision, even though some people think it's clear, yeah, if you're going to be impartial, it's pretty clear, like you said, that it takes the third and the first round. But against a
Yeah,
guy like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but
no,
it's
no, go
just
ahead.
that I also completely agree with the whole point of, you know, um it's sort of, not a clear win or something, because it's such a technical, and I don't really like thinking about fights in a way that, oh, he picked up that round or he picked up that round. I want to look at the whole fight, and I want to see, the whole narrative, and I want to see
Yeah,
like
yeah,
O'Malley, oh, he clearly wins every round, and that's just how it goes. Like some fights are like that, and it's pretty, easily to see the level. In this fight, it's sort of like he just kept upping his level a little bit, and then he sort of kept the same level, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It's like you said, he didn't. His coach was screaming at him to do more, and he didn't. And he couldn't really.
yeah. And I
So
mean, Song
I
Yadong,
absolutely. I mean, I feel for those people who look at it that way, because I don't really like to think about fights like he picked up a round here or there or whatever, because you want to look at the whole fight and you want to think the same way through all of the rounds. Really, ideal.
yeah, that's very true. Exactly. That's when you know you have a clear winner, when you
Yeah.
don't have to score the rounds, even though it goes back and forth. There's a clear winner, but it is points fighting after all. But it shouldn't be against a
Yeah.
guy like Song Yadong because O'Malley had the reach advantage. Song Yadong is quick and is active, but if you have like a 1 point win, which you can call this because he had two 10-9s and lost the 10-9. I mean, if you have that against Song Yadong, how are you going to deal with Peter Yan? How are you going to deal with Merab? How are you going to deal with Umar? And maybe it's a case of, how we spoke previously about Peter Yan when he fought, like, was it Figgy and then Marcus McGee, I believe it was, who are like average guys. And Peter Yan didn't look too good. He like took them on points, but it was not close, but not that clear. And then he fights Merab and has like the fight of his life and just steps up in his own
Yeah.
level. Maybe that's what we'll see from Sean, but I'm not too sure when I see this kind of attitude. But speaking of those guys, I mean, there are a few alternatives. Who would you like to see Sean O'Malley go in there with next?
And there's a bunch of different fights I think the UFC can make because of the bantamweight division, and just it's stacked. But I think that the UFC, they don't really want to wait around regarding Sean O'Malley and putting him on a big fight, fight card. And so I think that we're gonna give him another step up, and he probably deserves that because Song Yadong is fifth ranked in the bantamweight division after all.
Yeah,
So you shouldn't really go down after that. So I think that there's only really one obvious solution here if you're looking at the title picture, and that is Umar, because Umar himself, has a do you say a claim to that title, because he's waited around for a long time now, and he's had I think it's 2 wins now with the figure win. I think it's 2 wins right after losing to Merab.
yeah, yeah. The
I might be
Batista win
wrong.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's 2 wins. So he is sort of building up, a little bit like Petrian. He's building up that resume before getting another title shot, because he needs to do that after that Merab fight, his first title shot. And I think O'Malley, after losing twice to Merab, and then this is his first win since that second Merab fight, you could make the argument that Umar should be clearly ahead of him in the pecking order, for the bantamweight title. And now we're talking about Merab, but also Petrian for the bantamweight title
Yeah,
actually. So it's Petrian right now, and after the trilogy fight between Merab and Jan, we will see what happens. But so you could make an argument that they shouldn't meet, that Umar should already be ahead of him. But if we're gonna match up this, if you're gonna make a trilogy fight between Jan and Merab, you need to have a fight in between for both of these guys. And I think that the logical thing to do is to probably do Umar versus O'Malley. Even though I'm sort of afraid of that fight, because knowing O'Malley, and knowing Umar, I could very well see that being 3 rounds or 5 rounds if it's a headliner, somehow, maybe a fight night or a co-main.
yeah,
I could very well see that being, 5 rounds of Umar lying on top of O'Malley, and O'Malley not really, just sort of being like, I'm done with this, I don't care, and
yeah.
just, surviving through the rounds, but yeah, not really doing that much. Yeah. So that's the danger of that fight, of making that fight. But I think that's the fight you can make for both of these guys. Do you agree with that, or
Yeah, you
you
have
think that
to,
there's
right?
another fight here?
I mean,
Yeah,
there's a part of me uh, that would like to see the Sean O'Malley and Corey Sandhagen matchup because I think it would be a
yeah,
very fun fight. And as a fan, and as a fan of boxing, it would be the highest level of boxing maybe that you can get in the UFC. Um, Certainly at the top at least. But just like you said, sporting wise, it has to be Sean O'Malley because also interesting what you said there with the like. I agree with the whole thing about yeah, maybe Umar should be ahead of Sean O'Malley, but Sean O'Malley is the one who stepped up in the co-main, and Umar's still on the prelims. So the UFC clearly don't see it that way, even though you and I probably do. And you have to also not only say what we want, but also what's reasonable in terms of what can the UFC do. And I do reckon that they do that fight, even though they also might be quite scared that Umar will take it because Umar isn't as popular from everything I've seen as Sean O'Malley. But there is also that chance, when a striker fights a wrestler, there is a chance that he knocks him out, even though Sean hasn't showed it before. But he also knows that Umar is a very top fight, so he should be able to prepare himself as good as ever, right? For that one. So I totally agree
yeah,
with you. Is what I'm trying to say with the fact that fight should be next. In the meantime, neither guy took that much damage. They both went 3 rounds here, so to make a kind of quick turnaround shouldn't be too hard. I mean, I know Sean isn't the most active, but now that he's trying to establish himself again, maybe he should be. And he wants a fight at the White House. It's quite risky to sit out and hope that if Peter Yan beats Merab, that he should already fight on the White House card again. I'm not sure that's the best strategy, so we'll see what they'll do. But that's yeah, it is the fight that should happen. Sean O'Malley against Umar. Um, and then right, we move on to the main event. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this one. Gaethje, Justin Gaethje, obviously putting a beat down on Paddy Pimblett. Scousers don't get knocked out, and Paddy proved that, but they do take a lot of damage, and neither of us anticipated this. And I've seen a lot of people give Justin Gaethje credit, and of course you have to do because the guy's like 37 in lightweight and is beating up one of the best contenders there is. But I don't want to go in with it straight away, but I mean, the level for me, I expected a lot more. I expected Justin Gaethje to look better, and he didn't really listen to his coaches. Even though he was good striking wise, I think he looked a bit slow, and especially I do think he didn't look technically as good as maybe he should be looking if he wants to have a title fight. And I mean, this is the same old Justin Gaethje, of course it is. You're never going to get a clean boxer, but for me, even though he won in quite dominant fashion, and we have to say that it was a clear win for Gaethje, it didn't get me that much out of my seat, other than the fact that there was a lot of damage being done but it was mostly from Gaethje to Paddy. So, like I said, we didn't get this one right. Were you as surprised as me that Gaethje actually did this well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said there regarding, the fight and how I feel about it, really. I think that, Gaethje, he was a lot better than I thought that he was gonna do, and mostly, Paddy, he didn't do as well as both of us thought he would do. So I think that was a sort of a result of both of them meeting in the middle, maybe.
Yeah,
Gaethje being better than we thought, but also Paddy being worse than we thought, and not really, having that level of fight IQ that I think we have sort of seen before. At least we've talked about it before, and I think I've seen it before. I thought that this was a step back for him in terms of fight IQ and um, managing the fight
yeah,
throughout the rounds. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that Gaethje couldn't, or sorry, Paddy couldn't. He couldn't cope with Gaethje's power in terms of the striking. He thought he could. It's as you said. They said beforehand. Scousers don't get knocked out, and sure, he didn't get knocked out, but he sure uh, got cracked at least
yeah,
um, from Justin Gaethje's striking, and maybe that was something that he didn't think that would happen beforehand. He thought that he would just go in there and steamroll Justin Gaethje. Maybe I thought so as well. So maybe he even overrated himself somehow, but he really should have, Paddy should have, I think, mixed it up a lot more in the sort of the way, in sort of the fashion that we have seen him do before,
yeah,
and especially, try to get on top, try to get, ground and pound, do the striking that way, not, through, don't go into a fist fight with Justin Gaethje, then you're begging to get sort of, messed up,
yeah.
I guess. So. That's really all I have to say on the main event. Even though it was a really good fight. I guess that I can say that to give credit to both of the fighters. They gave us a really good fight, a good scrap. That's what you can say. It wasn't as technical, maybe as some people would have liked. And sure, but it was a good fight. And regarding what's next, for Paddy, he has to obviously with this fight. It showed, I think, that he wasn't ready for the title.
Yeah.
Maybe would agree with that. That he
Definitely.
needs a couple more fights. Yeah, that he needs a couple more fights. Just to get his act together, to get that fight IQ and really settle. Maybe like Hamzat, um, before he, after he had a couple of fights that maybe didn't go according to his game plan, and then he sort of changed that when he met Dricus. Maybe this was a bit too early for Paddy. And for Gaethje, I mean, he has been in this position before, and now he's here again, and now he's waiting for Ilia Topuria to come back, and that will be his next matchup. I'm pretty sure that it's officially. I'm pretty sure that it's officially, guaranteed by Dana White and the UFC. And regarding that fight, how do you think that will go for Justin Gaethje?
I know you've played a bit of poker. You know the phrase "go all in," put all your chips on Ilia
Yeah.
Topuria. I mean, I couldn't be more sure of anything, and I'm not even afraid of jinxing it here either. There was so many times, and I don't want to be negative because this was a main event, and I get why they put this as main event because was a very good scrap, and a lot of people were impressed by it. Um, but I couldn't help to see for 25 minutes straight of this fight the fact that if Ilia Topuria was in there, it wouldn't have gone 25 minutes. And it's good for the fans, this, but it's not. I hate to say, but it's not like top level MMA. This, it's really not, and especially not top level striking. So if you put Ilia Topuria in there with either guy, I mean, we've seen Topuria close out Oliveira, Volk, and Holloway. All three have shown a lot more fight IQ than Justin Gaethje. And my only hope was, as you covered, that Paddy Pimblett would have had a bit more fight IQ because he has certainly spoken like he would have had and showed so far. But what he hadn't shown before this fight was to do it against a top level guy because Tony Ferguson was finished, Michael Chandler is very, very poor in every area of MMA. So Paddy hasn't had that many of basically any top matchups. And now he got one of the better guys, and he got a bit schooled. I hate to say it because I actually like Paddy, but Justin Gaethje with that defense, I mean, it's going to take something incredibly special if he comes even close to beating Ilia Topuria. So it's almost like I don't want to see that fight because it's going to be quick. It's going to be very quick, in my opinion, at least. Um,
Yeah.
and Justin Gaethje, I'm not even going to get you the, the chance to rebuttal here because I almost know that you're going to agree, but he's going to lose to Ilia Topuria. He's going to be bad, and he said that he's going to retire if he doesn't win that fight, and he won't. But the real key fighter here is Paddy Pimblett because he took a lot of damage. He showed a lot of heart. He showed some decent things in there as well, but much as you said, he also showed that he didn't listen to his coach, like Hamzat, when his coach was saying, "Okay, go for the single leg," he was screaming single leg takedown all the time. Paddy didn't go for any. I felt he went for some takedowns, didn't succeed with any of them. Was what I meant to say, and that's he needs a bit of maturity. Hopefully, this can be like a s- a chance for him to learn and evolve and come back better. I know it's cliche to say, but I do believe that. But is there anyone, should I say, in your mind that you think should be next for Paddy Pimblett?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of difficult right now in the lightweight division because you have Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway who are going to fight each other. You don't want Paddy to go and fight someone that's too much, that's too far below him in the rankings, because he's young and you want to keep that momentum going. But is it the right choice? Because that's initially what I was thinking about, giving him to maybe, or giving the winner of, let's say, Oliveira or Holloway
Yeah.
to, or the loser, I mean, sorry, the loser,
Oh, loser.
Oliveira,
Okay. Yeah.
Holloway,
Yeah.
yeah, to Paddy Pimblett, and doing that matchup. But then again, after this fight, you really want to give him to, let's say, Max Holloway gets submitted by Oliveira, then I mean, Holloway is still, I think, at this point, regardless of what happens with him and Oliveira, I think that he's still a much better striker than Paddy Pimblett. I think the Gaethje fight now between Pimblett and Paddy showed that, and I think that if Paddy can't really cope with Gaethje's power, then I don't think that he's gonna be able to cope with the technique of Holloway, and his reach, just in general. And so the question really is that a good fight to make, or should he get someone maybe a bit lower in the rankings? What do you think? Do you think that they should get someone lower or a bit more like Holloway?
I mean,
Because
for
I'm
me,
sort of I'm not really sure about this one actually.
no. I mean, I really wanted him to win because I think, of course, he would have gotten the Ilya fight, but he also has beef with like Arman, or to put him in there with someone like Max or Charles. But I think Paddy is a bit of a star. He's at least very popular, and he's a prospect still. I guess he's he's not young, but he's definitely not old in terms of MMA. So he has a lot left to give. And I do reckon that you should just get his not to get his confidence back because it shouldn't be one sided, but I reckon that you put him in there because what I'm trying to say is that I agree with you that I think that Holloway or Oliveira, even if they lose, they are still a bit too much for Paddy. I wasn't sure about that before, but now that Justin Gaethje schooled him, I think that those guys definitely could because both of them put a beat down on Justin Gaethje when they fought. Um, so what I
Yeah.
personally would like, I think there are a few, a few interesting matchups we have. But what I'm looking towards is, of course, as we're gonna get onto in a video that will release soon, our preview for UFC 325. We have two very interesting lightweight matchups there. Of course, it's Dan Hooker versus Benoit Saint-Denis, and
Yep.
possibly I think the winner might be a bit too much, but at the same time, if there's like if Paddy was in like a title fight now, that's probably a reasonable fight. But otherwise, loser, I think either Santini or Hooker as a loser against Paddy is a very good fight and should be even fight as well. Or otherwise, you have Rafael Fiziev taking on of course, Mauricio Roffi. And I reckon that the winner of that fight actually should be a really good fight for
That's
Paddy. A
yeah,
one that should be
that's
even.
probably the best one actually,
Yeah, I
because
reckon so, right?
you know Paddy, yeah, because you know Paddy he still is quite high up in the division, and you don't really want to give a loser of a fight sort of below him to him, but at the same time the winner between Benoit and the winner has been on a really good run right now.
Yeah,
So if he wins quite convincingly versus Dan Hooker, then I wouldn't even put it past him to have a good fight and sort of beat up Paddy Pimblett, even though that sounds a bit insane. But he has a bit of he has basically sort of a similar skill set in that he has both the striking and the grappling. At least right now, he has shown a lot of better striking. And if he puts on a really convincing performance versus Dan Hooker, then maybe that's a bit too much for Paddy Pimblett.
yeah.
So but you don't also want to give him the loser. So
No, that's very true.
yeah, I actually agree with you there. That's probably the best fight for him to make right now, the best matchup after this event. So I think that's our reaction to the UFC 324 event done and dusted. If
Yeah.
there's nothing more to add for you there, so
No, not really. I mean, it feels good to be in this new Paramount era. It's all kicked off. It was a very long break from the UFC, but it's finally back. We've had our first card, and it kind of delivered, has to be said. But what I think is crazy is that this weekend coming up, we have another one. Have another um, numbered card. UFC 325, Volkanovski versus Lopez 2 takes place this Saturday, and we're going to preview that as well. So make sure you guys stick around for that video. It will be coming up soon. But otherwise, that's all from us. So thank you a lot for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.
yeah, catch you guys next time.